Welcome to Make It Happen Monday. Today, my goals are to hopefully end your regular habit of using sugar substitutes if that is something that you currently do. Because there is growing scientific evidence that they really are very much working against you. So, the first thing I want you to know is that there's very little, if any, data, particularly long-term data, to show us, to prove to us, to indicate to us that sugar substitutes actually help with weight control. In fact, if you look at the data, the long-term data that follows, studies that follow large groups of people for a long period of time, we see the opposite. And let me just quote one of the most sweeping review studies. Ultimately included 400,000 people, followed for a period of 10 years. And it was, combining the data, I think, from 37 different studies. And lo and behold, what did they see? They saw that people that regularly use sugar substitutes were more likely to gain weight, become obese, develop heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. You say, wow, what could be going on with this? Well, there's been a slew of studies that have been published over the last 10 years, trying to uncover what may be underlying this observation. And I'm going to quote from 3 different studies. One study was an animal study, specifically looking at mice, and they fed mice 2 groups of mice, identical diets, exposed them to identical food, except one had access to sugar substitutes and the other didn't. And lo and behold, the ones that had access to the sugar substitutes, despite the fact they had access to the exact same food, ultimately ate more and 30% more, typically day to day, and gained more weight and got fatter. Then what they did is they said, we're going to look at this. And they sacrificed those mice and they looked at their brains, trying to see if there were changes, differences between the 2 groups of mice at the level of the brain. Lo and behold, what did they see? Yes, there was a change in the reward center of the mice that had consumed the sugar substitutes, such that ultimately their appetite signals were amplified. So they were hungrier, driven by signals from the brain. The other thing that happened is that sweet foods had a higher reward potential. In other words, sweet foods tasted even better to them. The more sugar substitutes they did, the better sweet foods tasted, the more they wanted them. So bottom line there was increasing appetite and increasing sweet tooth. The second study I want to quote actually was first done in animals, and lo and behold, they used 3 of the most commonly used sugar substitutes, fed them to laboratory mice, and very quickly noticed changes in that all-important microbiome in such a way they saw the changes that we typically see when people go on to get insulin resistance. Think of that, we call that glucose intolerance. Think of that as like pre-diabetes, a metabolic slowdown, weight gain, right? So you don't want to get insulin resistance or glucose intolerance. Then they follow that up and say, let's see what happens in real people. Let's look at their microbiomes as a result of taking in sugar substitutes. And within a very short period of time, they saw alterations in the microbiome consistent with the kind of changes that seemed to take place prior to someone going on to developing this glucose intolerance, this slowdown in metabolism. And perhaps the most compelling one just came out. In fact, I'm going to write about it in my newsletter, and if this will not seal the deal for you, what this savvy group of researchers did is they took stem cells from human fat tissue and they exposed those stem cells in a cell culture to the kind of nutritive environment which is typical in the standard American diet, to include exposure to sugar substitutes. And they were using Splenda, and they used they did it with Splenda, they did it with aspartame and acetasulf. I always forget how to say that one. There's a third one they did. It begins with an A, acetasulf something. And what they found was, wow, that genes involved in fat storage dramatically were amplified. So these genes were turned on in such a way that fat was way more likely to build up in the cell, because frankly they were being able to transfer more fuel. It's got actually glucose transporter genes. So then they said, let's see what happens if we take fat cells from the abdominal fat of real people, real study subjects who are obese, including those that regularly do sugar substitutes and those that do not do sugar substitutes. Well, lo and behold, it was striking differences. They saw in the belly fat taken from obese subjects who regularly admitted to doing sugar substitutes, they saw those same genetic changes. They saw that those genes involved in glucose transport, think of those as fat storage genes, that's really what they are, were significantly amplified. That means these people are going to be able to be storing more fat, storing fat's easier for them. And then when they looked at obese people that didn't regularly partake in sugar substitutes, and they looked at their belly fat cells, they did not see that those same genetic changes. They did not have them. So this is really compelling data, and they're going on to do that study. They've done it a couple times. The second time they used even more people. They're going to, repeat it with an even bigger group. That's how we, like to do that. Do that in science to make sure that what we're seeing is truly true. But, again, with this epidemiologic data and this experimental lab data, and it all fits together, that these things absolutely work against us in terms of weight control, I really think it's kind of not smart to be doing them, at least doing them with any regularity, okay? And the most common way people take these sugar substitutes in is typically through diet drinks. So, don't just think about it's the ones that you put on food. Think about all the ones that you're getting exposed to from diet drinks, okay? So what I would suggest you to do when you want a little bit, when you want to sweeten something, use a little bit of the real thing. And the more wholesome natural sweeteners like raw honey, blackstrap molasses, maple syrup are the best. Yes, they have sugar in them, and those sugars aren't good for you. They're not. But at least there's some minerals and maybe some antimicrobial factors and some phytochemicals, at least some stuff, a little bit of stuff that may be good for you, along with a big dose of something that's not good for you. Anyway, so that would be my advice. And I hope that helps you, because I am personally convinced, and I've had a lot of people tell me that all they did was stop doing diet drinks, and they're like, how could it happen? I really did lose weight when I stopped taking in diet drinks. I didn't do anything else except stop taking diet drinks, and I lost weight. Well, now we know why, right? So I hope that helps you and allowing you to just ditch those sugar substitutes once and for all. Thank you.